Well, it started more than 2 years ago, but now the war in Syria has just breached another grim milestone. A report by the UN says the conflict has resulted in the deaths of nearly 93,000 people. Now, the vast majority, some 82%, were male, but the figures also show how the most vulnerable in society have been unable to escape the fighting. 6,500 children are among the dead, and of those, 1,700 had not reached their 10th birthday. Now, our diplomatic editor, James Bays, is at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Now, James, every day we report on the fighting that's on the ground. We see the pictures. But this figure that's just come out of the UN, that really brings the human cost to the battle, doesn't it?
It is an absolutely staggering figure, covering events right up until the end of April this year. That figure standing at 92,901 deaths. It's worth saying that the UN is not on the ground doing body counts. They're not counting bodies in Syria. They don't have the access to do that. What they've done is a statistical analysis. They've looked at 8 different sources. They've gone through those sources, working out the names, the dates and the locations. If they don't have one of those bits of information, then they're not including the deaths. But this, a very, very large figure. It works out on average over the last year of 5,000 people every single month. Now, by my calculation, that makes a death toll in Syria, Fawzia, on average every day over the last year of about 166 people.
There you go, that you've just broken down and just given to us. Now, will this report, we have the report, the UN has this report, will this report now push the UN Security Council to action, to do something about it? We are, of course, reminded of the genocides in Rwanda. We're reminded of the genocides in Bosnia before the UN actually stepped in. How many more people need to die before some sort of action is taken?
Well, that's the question I think so many people in the world are asking, and so many people on the ground in Syria are asking. I don't know whether it will have any effect. What I do know is that this figure was released. Navé Pillay, who's the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, produced this new figure, commissioned a company to produce this new figure after pressure from the bosses at the UN, from Ban Ki-moon. He said we need a new figure, and I think he was coming under pressure from some of the ambassadors at the UN Security Council, because they are trying to come up with some sort of solution. You're right to say there has been deadlock at the UN Security Council for a very long time now. There is one thing, though, in the last month or so that the US and the Russians agree on, which is this new plan to try and get both sides around the table in Geneva. That, though, doesn't seem to be working. The violence continues on the ground. The opposition has said it will not attend talks in Geneva until that violence ends. What I think we need to look to is the next few days, the G8 meeting in Northern Ireland, where all of those 8 world leaders sit around a table. Among those, President Obama and President Putin. That might be a chance, I think, to reboot the Geneva process, to try and persuade both sides to come and have talks about the situation.
James, thank you very much for that report. James Bays, our correspondent from the United Nations. Now, the fighting inside Syria is showing no signs of letting up. These are the latest pictures we have of shelling in Qaboun, in the outskirts of Damascus. Now, hundreds of families have fled the area in recent months. And it's a similar picture in Rastan, Homs province. Now, Rastan is one of the rebels' remaining strongholds, and activists say it could be the next target of a ground assault by Assad forces. And inside Syria, there are reports of fighting around Aleppo and Damascus. Now, the millions of people displaced by fighting are barely able to survive. Al Jazeera spoke to some refugees in Damascus who had to leave their homes in Qusair.
I found a piece of bread, that small, and fed it to my kids. I didn't eat so they could eat. All day my son would tell me he is hungry and he wants bread.
They cut everything, food supplies, medical supplies. They were shelling everywhere on all roads. They sieged us at the end, and they even forbid women and children from coming out.